Welcome to the Common Man Football Show. My name is James Coburn, and today's episode, we're talking about the Houston Texans 2017 Team Review Analytics. And this video specifically is going to get into all of the team statistics of the Houston Texans, whether you're talking offense, defense, special teams. We're going to look at all the areas where they were above average, below average, and ultimately with this video, this is not to bash the Houston Texans or to go over all the reasons why they were bad this year. It's ultimately to do that, but to give you ideas about where they need to get better. Because I'm going to tell you all the areas where they were below average, and then I'm going to get into all the areas where they need to get in free agency and the draft to get better based on how the data shakes out. So this isn't based on my opinion about how teams that typically win football games perform, statistically speaking. This is based on the facts. Like, this is how these teams perform. If you want to win 12 wins, 9 wins, 8 wins, etc., you have to perform at these particular levels when it comes to your statistics. So that's basically what this video is. And if you're new to the channel, you're new to the content that I provide, all terms and definitions are in the description. So again, if you're new to this, you're new to all this kind of stuff, you can just go there and get all that information. And of course, listen to me, of course. So let's get into the Houston Texans. And keep in mind, I don't want to hear videos in the comments saying, well, Deshaun Watson got injured or so-and-so player was this. And, this is not about playing hypotheticals here. This is about how you performed this year, and based on that, how to get better in the future. So this is how the Houston Texans performed this year, the entire season. This is how they were as a team. When you look at offense, below average. Defense, below average. And of course, you look at special teams, pretty much below average in a lot of different areas. Starting with offense, the turnover percentage was below average. They were not that great in terms of not turning the football over on offense. Sack percentage was significantly below average, 8.03 out of 100, so they allowed way too many sacks this year. And offensive score percentage was 33.23 out of 100, which is also below average as well. So offensively speaking, they turned the football over way too much, they allowed too many sacks, and they didn't put enough points on the board, period, to register even average ability to do that. Defensively speaking, below average in terms of defensive offensive score percentage, below average in terms of turnover ratio, below average in terms of sack percentage, below average in terms of interception percentage. So they were not able to prevent points. They really couldn't create that many turnovers. They really didn't create a lot of sacks, as many sacks as they need to in terms of their overall team sack rate. And they also did not create a lot of interceptions. So defensively speaking, not getting it done either. Special teams wise, punt return yardage, below average. Kick return yardage, below average. Defensive punt return yardage, below average. Defensive kick return yardage was a little bit above above average. Field goal percentage below average, definitely an issue to kind of consider going forward. Extra point percentage below average as well. Punting average though, very, very good. So the two areas where the Houston Texans were actually above average was defensive kick return yardage and punting average. That's it. And of course, their overall team score was a 10.24 out of 100, which of course is significantly below average. So, no other way around it. The Texans were just not that great of a football team last year. And again, you can make as many excuses as you want, but I'm just giving you the facts. So, like, this is how you perform this year. There's lots of reasons as to why, but this is the issue. This is basic sort of issues here. When you look at how this 2017 Texans team compares to the 2016 Texans team, they really got worse in almost every area. They got worse on offense. They got worse in terms of defense. They got worse on special teams. The field goal percentage got, like, in many different ways. They just didn't get better in anything for the most part. So except for like defensive offensive score percentage, and punting average. So those are the only like areas where they actually got a little bit better. Sack percentage kind of went up a little bit, but and a couple other areas. But ultimately, the Texans got a lot worse this year, in terms of their overall team statistics. So not the best, to say the least. In terms of how this Texans team compares to every Texans team in the history of the Texans. They pretty much were the third worst team since I think 2002. So ultimately, not the best year. Definitely not that great of a year, to say the least, in terms of the Texans. So I'm not saying something because this is the Texans we're talking about. They have very few winning seasons versus losing seasons in terms of the course of the franchise. But ultimately, yeah, that's basically how the Texans team performed that year. In terms of where they can get better, so the chart we're looking at right now is looking at what the average score and all those various data points I talked about for teams that win 12 to 16 wins, 9 to 11 wins, 8 wins or more, or 7 wins or less. So this is basically giving you some perspective on this is where you were this year, and this is where you need to be, or this is where you ideally would be. Because since this is the average area, like this is a average team that wins 12 to 16 wins typically performs like this, you should be striving to get into that area. Because if you get into that area, you increase your chances of winning more games, of getting into that 12 to 16 win area or getting into that 9 to 11 win area ultimately, which, could spell playoffs for you. But ultimately, as you can see in every sort of data point, they need to get better on offense in every area. They need to not turn the football over as much. They need to not allow as many sacks. They need to get more points on the board on offense. They need to prevent more points. They need to get more turnovers. They need to get more sacks. They need to get more interceptions. Special teams could use some improvement, whether it's punt return yardage or kick return yardage. The defensive side of the ball, in terms of defensive punt return yardage, needs to improve. Place kicker, especially field goal percentage, below average. That definitely needs to get more into the above average range if they want to win more football games. Same thing with extra point percentage. Punting average was just fine. And then, of course, the overall score of 10.24 is ideally not where it needs to be. It needs to be more in the 70s to 80s range in terms of the overall data. So lots of stuff to think about, lots of stuff to improve, but ultimately this is just a general idea of where you are and where you need to be in the future. So these are all the areas where you need to improve upon, if you will. So this is all the areas that are kind of like that. Now, finally, at least the last sort of data chart that we're going to look at here is other sort of data points. So these are data points that I don't typically talk about that much during the season, but I do think are important. And I do think they give you some idea about where you regressed or where you got better and stuff like that. Ultimately, when you look at these data points, and again, all terms and definitions are in the description, so if you're not familiar with any of these data points, you can just go there to get all that information. But when you look at here, completion percentage has been a big issue. First down completion percentage regressed. Second down kind of stayed the same. And third down was 8.78 out of 100 was the third down completion percentage for the Texans. That is not where it needs to be, especially in the modern. Like, this is based on every single team since 1998. So I'm comparing this team to teams that were in the 90s, like in the early 2000s where completion percentage was typically less. So they really need to increase the completion percentage on offense. The running game, they need to get better in terms of first down conversion rate, especially. That was kind of their big bugaboo this year. And when it comes to the passing game, they have to get better in terms of third down conversion rate. First down conversion rate was good, but not amazing. And second down was actually okay. But third down is probably the biggest area I would say they really need to improve upon. But ultimately, this is just the other sort of data points to keep track of and think about when it comes to the Texans, because it's just one of the biggest sort of issues and areas of concern when it comes to them. So when it comes to free agency and the draft, what exactly do you need to do? Well, pretty much everything. You need to get more offensive playmakers. You need to get more, offensive linemen, of course, because that sack percentage is really, really poor, and ultimately you can't have that continue. So you need to get better in terms of getting more offensive linemen to prevent sacks, to prevent those big plays from happening. Defensively, you have to get better in terms of creating turnovers and getting interceptions. So those would definitely be those types of positions that I would consider targeting, is guys that can sack the quarterback, guys that can get turnovers, interceptions, all those different kinds of things. And ultimately, I do understand there's a lot of people that are saying, well, when J.J. Watt comes back, things will be better. But he's been injured a lot, and you can't guarantee that. So despite the fact that, J.J. Watt was amazing, you can't depend on him. You have to build a defense around other guys, or at the very least, you have to you need to keep building the defense with the idea that, okay, J.J. Watt isn't always going to be here. J.J. Watt may not be here for the rest of his career, maybe, because of all the injuries he's had. So you have to start thinking in that mindset, unfortunately. But if you can do that, if you get more offensive linemen in the draft or the free agency that can actually perform, you get more offensive skill position players, and of course you target defense in terms of everything on defense: linebackers, cornerbacks, safeties, edge rushers even. If you can get more of those types of impact players, I think this defense will be better overall, whether that's for free agency or the draft. But those are all the areas where I would definitely think you need to target. And of course, my name is James Coburn. You can find my other work at draftcoburn.wordpress.com. You can also follow me on Twitter at Geometrics. And if you like this content and you want more content like this, be sure to leave a like and subscribe. Share this video as well with anybody that you know. Hit that notification button so that you're always reminded when another video of mine drops. And I'll talk to you guys in the next video. Peace.